Some people woke up to a normal travel day. Boarding passes, alarms, coffee, rides to the airport. Then the screens turned into the same word, over and over. Cancelled. No long explanation, no gradual ramp down. Just a message that operations were winding down and flights were done. For passengers, it felt like a glitch. For workers, it felt like a trapdoor. Because an airline doesn't collapse like a store. It collapses like a system shutting off. And that's the part most people don't understand. Spirit didn't die in one dramatic crash. It ran out of sky in slow motion, then flipped overnight. Scroll 1. The night the screens went dark. From the outside, airline failure looks simple. A company runs out of money and stops flying. But the way it happens is colder. It happens when confidence disappears. Airlines live on tomorrow's promise. Future tickets, scheduled routes, a timetable people trust. When that trust breaks, everything breaks at once. The night Spirit stopped, the public didn't get a warning arc. They got a hard stop that turned travel plans into stranded problems instantly. Because airports don't pause for your bankruptcy. Hotels don't pause. Rental cars don't pause. Connections don't pause. And for staff, it's worse than a normal layoff. A shutdown doesn't just remove income. It removes predictability. The human story is immediate. Families waiting at arrivals, missed weddings, missed funerals, missed shifts. And the question everyone asks is the same. How does a major airline go from bookable to gone overnight? Because overnight is never truly overnight. It's a decision made after weeks of bad numbers and shrinking options, finally turning into a switch. Scroll 2. What passengers thought versus what was actually happening. Most passengers thought it was a normal travel problem. Weather, delays, a staffing issue, systems are down. Because airlines have taught people to wait it out. When you're a traveller, you look for the usual signs. A gate change, a new boarding time, a rebooking link. You assume the airline will fix it because that's what airlines do. But an overnight collapse doesn't feel like a delay. It feels like the rules of travel have been turned off. And that's the first clue that something bigger is happening behind the scenes. Inside an airline, there's a line you don't see. The moment the company stops believing it can reliably operate tomorrow. When that belief breaks, the system has to protect itself first. Because airlines aren't just planes. They're a chain of payments that must keep flowing. Fuel, airports, aircraft leases, maintenance, insurance, vendors, payroll, and debt. Passengers see flight numbers. Management sees cash burn. And if the numbers get bad enough, stay open becomes a daily negotiation. That's why bookable can be misleading. An airline can look alive on the outside while it's fighting for oxygen inside. Schedules can exist even when the company is running out of room to honour them. So passengers were planning trips, workers were showing up for shifts. Meanwhile, the airline was trying to survive the next deadline. And that's what makes the overnight moment feel like betrayal. It isn't that the problem appeared suddenly. It's that the public learned it suddenly. Scroll 3. The rescue that didn't come. For a long time, Spirit had a story that kept it alive. Not profitability, hope. Hope that a deal, a buyer, or a restructuring would buy time. That's what most people miss about airlines on the edge. They don't collapse the day they start losing money. They collapse the day the last escape hatch closes. Spirit spent years trying to find that hatch. Cost cuts, network changes, raising cash, negotiating with creditors. And for a while, the biggest lifeline was the idea that someone else would take the keys. A JetBlue merger. When that path dies, the math gets brutal fast, because Spirit's model depends on volume and constant flying. If planes aren't full, if costs spike, if capacity gets disrupted, the cheap ticket stops being cheap to operate. Then the business becomes a countdown. Not to the end of the quarter, but to the next bill. Lease payments, engine work, airport fees, fuel, payroll, debt service. At a certain point, management isn't asking, how do we grow? They're asking, how do we make it to next week? And when the answer becomes, we can't, everything changes overnight. That's why the shutdown feels like betrayal. The public sees the last day. Inside, the decision is the final move in a chess game that ran out of legal moves. So the question isn't just why Spirit failed, it's why it failed suddenly. Because airlines can run on thin air for a long time, until the market stops lending them oxygen. Scroll 4, the math behind the switch. Spirit didn't just sell seats. It sold a low price that only works if the planes keep flying and the costs stay predictable. When that balance breaks, the losses don't show up as drama. They show up as pressure. Pressure from bills that don't care whether your flights are full. Airlines have fixed costs that hit like a metronome. Aircraft leases, maintenance, airport fees, insurance, payroll, debt. You can't pause those costs without pausing the airline itself. And the ULCC, ultra low-cost carrier model, has less cushion. Cheap fares mean you need high utilization and strong demand to make the math work. If demand weakens or costs rise, there isn't much room to absorb it. So the airline starts squeezing what it can. Routes get cut, schedules get trimmed, staffing gets tightened, planes get shuffled. But cost cutting has a limit when the product is literally moving metal through the sky. Then liquidity becomes the real battlefield. How much cash is left, how fast it's leaving, and whether anyone will lend more. Because airlines can survive being unprofitable as long as they can keep funding tomorrow. At some point, the conversation shifts from how do we recover to can we operate safely and reliably next week? And when the answer becomes we can't, the only responsible move is to stop the system from making new promises. That's the hidden logic behind overnight. It isn't one bad day. It's the moment the company can no longer guarantee the next day. Scroll 5, the fallout and the lesson. When an airline shuts off, the damage isn't just cancelled flights, it's dominoes. Hotels, connections, cruises, work shifts, family plans, all collapsing behind one screen. People don't just lose a seat, they lose time, money, and certainty. And the worst part is how fast you're forced to make decisions while you're stressed. If you're stranded in a shutdown, the first move is simple. Don't wait for clarity that may not come quickly. Secure an alternate way home first, then start the refund fight from a stable place. Save everything. Booking confirmation, emails, screenshots of cancellations, receipts for replacement travel. Documentation turns your story into proof, and proof moves faster than emotion. If you paid by credit card, contact the airline first if possible. If you can't reach anyone, ask your card issuer about a chargeback. Chargebacks aren't guaranteed, but speed matters, and waiting usually helps the seller, not you. If you booked through a third party, you may have to go through them. That extra layer can slow everything down. So don't assume someone will handle it. Assume you are the handler. And now, the bigger lesson. The airline industry sells confidence as part of the ticket. On-time arrivals, smooth rebooking, we'll take care of it. But confidence is fragile when the balance sheet is bleeding. And the public doesn't see the bleeding until the last moment. That's why bookable is not the same as healthy. Spirit's overnight collapse is a warning about more than one airline. It's a warning about systems that run on thin margins and constant motion. When the motion stops, the truth shows up instantly and the passengers pay first. For more inside company lies, check out why the Olympus CEO got fired for $675 million. Check out this video.